Carla, thank you for joining us on Upswing. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Before we jump into raw food practices, habits, and ways that people can implement raw food into their everyday, do you mind giving us a rundown of how you got to where you are?
Sure. So it's actually been 12 years for me. I changed my diet myself back in 2008, and I was inspired by my mother, who is a nutritionist. So I grew up eating healthier than my peers, but it wasn't that strict. And my mom actually healed herself from depression through a raw vegan diet. She went on a retreat, she felt amazing, and then she started implementing, and then she started like gently pushing myself, with her. And so I decided to go for it. I always think it's funny because at the time I just wanted to lose some weight, and that was my goal. I'm gonna go raw for a week to lose some weight, and it's just for me now. It's like, okay, you change your diet for 7 days, and then what, right? Anyway, so I was 20 years old. That was my goal, and I just felt amazing. So I just dove right in, and I fell in love with the lifestyle, with how creative you could be with your diet. And for me, it made sense, to eat super clean, to not put processed foods into your body, to not put chemicals, and to just eat food as fresh as could be. And eventually I went back to Brazil. That's where I'm from. And I went to school for architecture. That was my lifelong dream. And while I was in school, all of my friends and coworkers wanted to try my food because I ate differently. And that's how my business got started. And eventually it wasn't as pretty and smooth, but eventually I quit architecture school, and then I went full on. I went to culinary school, raw vegan culinary school, and now I'm here.
What an incredible story. I'm so excited to talk to you about raw vegan food so that we can maybe help some other people discover the benefits of a raw vegan diet. So could you maybe dive into what is a raw vegan diet, or just defining that for us?
Sure. So raw foods means that nothing is cooked, right? So raw foods is plant-based, meaning no animal products, no dairy, no meat, no milk, no cheese, and no fish too. I know a lot of people think meat, only red meat, but chicken, pork, fish, all of it, and no animal products. Some people do consume honey, others don't, but basically fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, seaweed, mushrooms, and as fresh as could be. So with raw, we are trying to not heat food above 118 Fahrenheit. And the reason is to preserve all of the enzymes and a lot of the nutrients that you lose when you cook food. So enzymes, our bodies are full of enzymes. We need enzymes for everything. And we come with a certain storage of enzymes. And if we're eating cooked food, we're depleting our own enzymes. So when you eat food full of it, you are just saving your body that extra work. And that's why, for me, what I noticed was an increased amount of energy. So I feel like when I eat raw, I just have so much energy. And then it made sense, right? Because I'm preserving my enzymes. My body is not working as hard to digest it. It's live foods. It's meaning it's alive. It's not dead. So it's full of, just energy. And that's how I felt about it. And I guess that's the basics of raw food.
I ate raw food, but I also had sashimi because at that time I thought that as long as it wasn't cooked, I was able to have it. And I was like, okay, I can have sashimi. So you're saying that no, we still don't have animal products if you're
No. Correct. So it's funny because, back in 2008, when I changed my diet and I would say, oh, I eat a raw diet, everybody said, oh, like sushi. And I don't consume animal products. So no, not like sushi. It's not part of it. Um, there's also an array within the raw vegan diet. There's so many people that do different things, right? I am not super strict. I eat probably 98% raw, which I guess it's still pretty strict, but
Pretty close. Yeah.
I crave it. I feel good, and I do it. It comes naturally to me. So yeah, but no animal products.
If people wanted to find scientific journals or websites or find any other information, do you have any suggestions on where they can look?
Yes, there are some doctors that I follow that I really like. So, for example, Dr. Gabriel Cousins, he was my mom's mentor. My mom did a master's degree in living foods nutrition with him, and I find him amazing. He has a lot of books out. He also heals people from diabetes and more serious illnesses just through diet. So I really like that because he has a scientific background for it, you know, and research, and he can back it up. There's a Hippocrates Institute, which is actually here in Florida, in West Palm Beach, and they do the same thing. Dr. Brian Clement, and that's who runs the institute, and they do a healing program as well. And there's doctors Rick and Karen Dina. They are like newer people that I recently came across, and I'm actually starting a nutrition course with them next week, which I'm very excited about. I've I've gone to culinary school. I grew up with my mom, but I personally I've done most of my learning through myself. So I'm excited to go through a program and just dive deeper into that too. Dr. Robert Morse too. There's a lot of information on raw foods nowadays, and it's fantastic. It makes me really happy to see how far it has come, you know, for me to come somewhere and tell people, oh, I eat a raw vegan diet, I'm a raw vegan chef, and people get excited about it because they already know. Ooh, it's so good.
It must be so exciting when you meet people who, you know, might not eat raw but are excited to learn more. Are people able to go to your Instagram, or do you have a website so they can catch on to what you cook and what you do?
Yes. So my Instagram is where I'm the most active. It's raw chef Carla, Carla with a C, and I post everything that I do. So nowadays, I sell amazing cakes, raw vegan cakes. I teach classes, which is my favorite. I love classes. I realized I started by teaching English while I was going to architecture school, and I realized how fulfilling that was. And then people started wanting to learn more about raw foods, and I just decided that that's what I was going to do, and I love it. I had a class earlier today, and it's just so amazing to introduce those flavors and ways of uncooking, like I say, to people, just to show how you can use different ingredients to create amazing things that a lot of people have no clue about. And I also meal prep for clients and deliver. So for those who don't want to learn, don't want to be in the kitchen, don't want to wash dishes, I can do all the work and just deliver to their house.
And is that only in Palm Beach that you
No,
deliver?
I'm actually in Fort Lauderdale, but most of my clients are in Miami. So I expand. I go from Fort Lauderdale to Miami all the time.
Perfect. And for your classes, can people take them online or only in person?
I've done classes online since quarantine started. We had to adapt, right? It's fun. It's not the same, but it's fun. I can be on this side cooking with people, and I had one earlier this week too. So I do both. I prefer in person, but if they're far away too, I have that option, which is awesome. Technology. We gotta learn how to use it.
We are talking about eating raw. Does that mean that you avoid foods that are like refined, processed, pasteurized, or treated with pesticides? And could you explain that a little bit for those of us who are not familiar with that terminology? Because if you're watching on the YouTube, you'll see that I had to read that.
Yes, for sure. So we do avoid it. So basically, process means anything that you do with the food, right? So if I blend it, it's a process, but we avoid things that are highly processed. When you mean refined, you're basically stripping the food from a lot of its things to achieve a certain goal, you know? So like refined sugar, you don't have sugar cane and you can juice that and have a juice of sugar, but then from that to refined white powder that we get, it's a long process. Okay. So that's refining. You're stripping so many of the nutrients and you're removing everything just to get one little, you know, grain of sugar or whatever it is. And when you pasteurize it, you are basically adding heat to kill any pathogens, but you're also killing a lot of the nutrients and the enzymes in the food. So for example, if you go to the grocery store and you buy fruit juice or vegetable juice, but it's been pasteurized, the nutrients are not really there anymore. And also, how fresh is it? How long has it been sitting in that can? You know, they usually have to add a lot of things in order to preserve it. And the whole idea behind raw foods is to eat as fresh as possible, the way that nature intended for you to have it. So if you go to your garden and you pick something, how long will that actually last? Or if you go and you make yourself a cup of juice, cold pressed juice, it's going to be good for about 24, 48 hours pushing, but it goes bad. So for me, that idea of going to the grocery store and buying something that has been sitting on a shelf, it has traveled, it has been made, I don't know where, it just, it doesn't align with me anymore because I don't see it as food anymore, you know? So, and this is very personal, obviously, but I feel like the whole idea behind raw foods is that to eat as fresh as possible in order to nourish your body. So it doesn't mean that we're not emotionally attached to food anymore. You can process it and treat it in a different way. So the ways that I deal with my food is I do a lot of sprouting and dehydrating and fermenting. I do blend things and I juice, but that's about it. And then it's just a fun way and guilt-free, you know, because you know that you're getting the best out of it. So I do a lot of gourmet foods and it's just fantastic. Like I still get excited to this day, 12 years later, I get excited when I make something that I put a lot of time and effort into and it just turns into this amazing thing. It's like, oh, I can't believe simple ingredients make this and I'm going to feel good after I eat it.
So we did touch on eating really fresh food, like from the earth as nature intended it. I would think, and I'm not really familiar with raw food, so, you know, hold my hand. I would think that would mean that a lot of it would be like seasonal. Could you maybe share with us some things that you would eat in different seasons?
So ideally, yeah. So one good way to deal with that is going to farmers markets, right? Because if you eat produce that's grown in your area, then you're going to see more of it naturally. And fortunately or unfortunately, we now tend to have access to foods that come from everywhere in the world, and we tend to have access to fresh food. I say unfortunately because when you eat seasonally, the food is at its peak of nutrition. So, and it's not traveling, right? So we're not also damaging nature in that way, packaging and traveling and taking long distances. Why aren't we supporting our local farmers? But I say it's a good thing because we tend to have access to more things, right? And we live in Florida where it's hot all year long, but sometimes it's too hot for certain things. And then people who live in a cold climate, perhaps they don't have access because it's too cold. So I think, you know, there's the good and the bad, but eating seasonally, if you can, would be ideal. But when I first went raw, I used to be very strict and I went all in and I treated almost as a religion. And then I realized that wasn't the way to go either, because if I'm stressing myself over the food that I'm eating, then it's what's the point? I feel like this stress is undoing all the good that I'm doing with my food. And there's even a name for it, which is orthorexia, when you're just obsessed with your health, that you just need to be so healthy. And At one point, I just decided to peel my label. I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm going to eat whatever I want. And that's when I still ate, 95% raw or whatever, because it came naturally. My body asked for it.
Yeah.
So I feel like there are certain layers of it that you can choose to add on or remove. But I feel like for any beginners, for people who are scared and they don't understand what it is, and they have that feeling like, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that, that's not the right approach, because the reality is I can have whatever I want. I can eat whatever I want. It's simply a choice not to have it. So I feel like if you want to start by just adding more fruits and vegetables into your diet, that's amazing. I love, for example, green smoothies. I usually tell my clients, add a green smoothie every day. We all need to consume more greens. Even me, we all can benefit from consuming more greens into our diet. So add a handful of spinach, whole bunch of fruit, and start playing with flavors that you like. And that's such a good way. It's tasty and it's easy and it's fast and it's so nutritious that you can add raw foods into your diet. And I feel like slowly you can, peel the layers as you please and as you see fit. So for example, if I travel, I'm not super strict with my diet. I was recently in Mexico and then in California, and I ended up eating out a lot. And I am fascinated with the amount of vegan food available everywhere nowadays. So there's very few excuses that one can have for not eating healthier, for not making better choices. I travel with an app called Happy Cow, and you can find all the vegan or veg friendly restaurants around, which is amazing. But, I wasn't raw all the time. I ate a lot of food that was available for me, and I was fine. And I decided to relax. I probably gained some weight, but I was not, stressed over it. It's like I'm enjoying my vacation. When I go home, I'm going to go back into my routine. So, it's a great question, but we have to do what we can in order to do the best, right?
I love that. It's all about balance.
Can you describe what juicing is and the pros and the cons behind it?
Sure. So juicing is when you remove the fiber and you just get the liquid out of fruits, vegetables, mostly, right? Sprouts. And juicing is an amazing way to really boost your health, because even though we all know that fiber is essential, when you remove the fiber, you are basically assimilating all the nutrients within minutes. So you're bypassing digestion. So for people who either have, digestive problems, or for anyone for that matter, we can just boost our nutrition right away by adding juice. Ideally cold pressed juice, because if you have a centrifugal juicer, they tend to heat up and they oxidize a lot faster. So if you use a cold pressed juicer, it's a better quality of juice. So that means that it has a gear and it just turns and it presses the juice against the screen and you get the juice out. And you can see the difference right away if you juice both, side by side. The color of the juice is so much brighter with the cold pressed juice. So you're retaining more of the nutrients, and the juice also stay fresher longer. Um, so I find juicing amazing, and I try to do it as much as I can. Sometimes I slack because, everybody has that like, oh, I don't want to clean the juicer. But once you get the hang of it, it's just amazing. And I try to juice for, every other day or so. And I always tell people, sometimes I even freeze my juice. If I make too much accidentally, I'll freeze it. And people go and ask, well, but I thought fresh, you needed to drink it fresh. I'm like, yes, fresh is best, but frozen is better than none at all. So that's how I go about my juicing, and I try to do it as much as I can. And I notice the difference right away. Like if I drink lemon, ginger, turmeric shots, for example, you can see, like, you feel your immune system just like getting stronger, like, immediately. And I think it's amazing. Depending on what it is, I get so energized too. So I really like it. It's really soothing for the stomach. It's just amazing. So that would be the difference between, juicing and blending or a smoothie, is because in the smoothie, we're preserving the fiber. And yes, the fiber is essential, but we can benefit from having both. So the smoothie can be more like a meal replacement. It adds all the good fiber that you want, and it's just denser, so it's going to keep you full for longer. But you can benefit from having the juice as a booster, basically.
And with juicing, are there simple steps that somebody can implement into their everyday, as well as do you have any favorite easy recipes that somebody can start with?
Sure. So I find that celery and cucumber are the easiest to juice because they give you a lot of juice, meaning, juicing can get expensive because think about it. If you get a bunch of kale, you get so little juice out of that, but you wouldn't be able to eat that anyway. So if you are juicing one bunch of kale and you're just getting a little shot, it's also okay because you're basically, shooting up the nutrients for a whole bunch of kale. But I find that in terms of yield and giving you just more bulk, you can do celery, which is so easy. You just chop it up, rinse it, and throw it in the juicer. Cucumbers, they also give you a lot of juice. And then you can spice it up with whatever you like. So I like to usually put a lemon. And if I buy organic, I just wash it well. I don't even take the skin off. Some ginger. And I no longer feel the need but for beginners, it's really nice to add an apple or maybe some grapes or a pineapple, because if you go straight up for the green juices, it can be like a punch in the stomach. It's a little bit too strong and it takes a while for your taste buds to develop so that you can appreciate that. But the reason why I try to stay away from a lot of fruit juices is that when you remove the fiber, you're really concentrating the sugar. So you're getting like just a sugar rush. So it would be better, for example, to eat the apple or to eat an orange than to drink the juice because you can consume a whole bunch of sugar at once that way.
We touched on blending a little bit when we were talking about juicing and how that could be kind of a heavier, more of a meal, keep you fuller longer. Could you walk us through some of the first steps, things that you might need to get into blending?
Sure. So I feel like it's essential to have a high-speed blender. And I recommend anyone and everyone, regardless of what your diet is, to get a Blendtec. That's my blender of choice. I've had mine for 10 years. It's still going strong. You can put your shoe in there and it's going to make soup out of shoe. It will blend anything. And these blenders are a little bit on the pricier side and it can be out of budget for a lot of people. But, considering that you spend $300 and it lasts you 10, 15 years, it has paid for itself. And it will really change the way you make food altogether. So I make a lot of the smoothies, first of all, and I noticed that when I use a normal blender, if I'm at someone's house, you're still chewing. So it's not really a smoothie because there's nothing smooth about it. So when you have a high-speed blender, it really helps. It makes the whole difference.
Yeah. I hate when you put kale in and then you get the bits of kale and you're just like,
yeah, exactly. So this doesn't happen in my blender. And I kid you not, it will change your life forever. So first of all, I feel like that's it. Number one, get the blender, and then figuring out recipes that you can easily make. So for example, I didn't used to like smoothies because I didn't know how to make them. And now I drink one every day at least. So I figure out that you need to put something creamy in it, a creamy fruit. So either a mango or a banana or an avocado, because that will give you a different texture. If you blend just like kale and apples, it would be more like a juice in terms of liquidy, and it will separate and it would be just weird. So if you blend a banana with the kale and the apple, you will see the difference. But so you have to pick a base. Do you want to use the almond milk or fruit juices or green juices or coconut water or aloe juice or just water? If I have nothing else at hand, I blend with water. Coconut water adds some sweetness and nutritional value. The milk will make it creamier. And then you will add your core, which will be your fruits and your vegetables. If you're a beginner, you can add some sweetener. for just optional. So maybe like a couple dates or a little bit of raisins. You can do a little bit of honey for those that consume honey. I'm not saying sugar. You could do coconut sugar perhaps. And then you can add spices and herbs. I love adding like cinnamon or ginger or cardamom, or even superfoods, cacao powder and goji berries and spirulina. So you can really boost. You don't want to do too much, because if you start adding too many flavors, then it's like a green monster. And personally, I've drank so many bad smoothies, but once I started, like I always have mason jars with me for everything. This is for tea. And I used to carry my mason jars with smoothies, and I would just make it very nutritious, right? It can either be delicious or super nutritious. So sometimes I'm like, oh, this is nutritious, I'm going to drink it. But people would ask to try it, and I'm like, oh, no, not even I like it. I can't give it to anyone. So I decided to tone it down, because if my job is to teach people and inspire people to eat healthier, I have to make really good food all the time. So making horrible smoothies is no longer a choice. So I learned that, you just tone it down, you pick a couple things that you like and you throw it in there. And now Google is your best friend. You can just Google so many recipes and you start playing around and see what you like. I love getting a whole bunch of mangoes and then I freeze it, because also when you freeze the fruit, the texture is going to be so different. It's just going to be creamier, kind of like what you get at a juice bar if you have a good blender.
That's the key. That's the key.
So Blendtec, right?
Yeah, Vitamix is a competitor and it's a good one too, but I just have I'm just picky.
So we'll see who calls us after this episode, and we'll see if we can get you guys a discount code.
I actually have one, so if you get it.
Wow, look at this opportunity. Would you like to share with our listeners?
Sure. So it's actually for Blendtec. I have a link in my bio on my Instagram, and the discount code is Raw Chef Carla 15. So you can get 15% discount. And I'm super excited because I've used Blendtec, like I said, for 10 years. And I always tag them. And recently they reached out and I was like, yay, finally.
Finally they know. What is dehydrating and what do you believe the pros and the cons are?
So dehydrating comes into basically making more gourmet food, I feel like, but it's like a low temperature oven. So instead of baking, you dehydrate. So we go back to keeping things raw and not heating it above 118 degrees. So my dehydrator is like a black box and it has little trays inside, looks like an oven, and it doesn't go above like 155 or so. So I use dehydrators to make crunchy snacks like crackers and chips and tortillas. And the other day I had a dehydrator class. We made cinnamon rolls and we made dumpling wrappers. So you can really go more gourmet in the food instead of just eating, because people have that idea that when I say raw foods that I just eat celery sticks and fruit. So when you have different equipment, different appliances, you can get into the more gourmet side of it. So I love using my dehydrator for those things, so the benefit is just getting gourmet food, still keeping it raw, and just adding different textures. So we're not cooking, right? We need to process it differently. So the way you blend things, how long you blend it for, or how you process it, how you chop, and how you dehydrate. That's what's going to add texture.
Do you have any easy or favorite recipes if somebody wanted to try dehydration for the first time or dehydrating for the first time?
Make like apple chips, for example. You can make fruit roll-ups by blending fruit and just spreading on the dehydrator tray. So you can like blend bananas and spread, and you're
good idea.
Fruit roll up. So those are really easy recipes. I dehydrate tomatoes and make my own, dehydrated tomatoes, kind of like sun-dried tomatoes. It's a good way to preserve food as well. So if I have things that are going bad, like mushrooms, I've bought too many mushrooms, I just pop them in a dehydrator and I have dry mushrooms now. They will last way longer. So there's so much that can be done. I love making flaxseed crackers. Um, Flax seeds are an amazing binder. So when you mix them with water, they gel up. And then this gel makes it for a really crunchy cracker once you dehydrate it. So you can just do flax seeds and some salt. And then if you want to add herbs and spices, you just mix it all in, plop it in the dehydrator. The downside is that it takes way longer. And the good side is that it won't burn your house down. I leave because my crackers take like, I don't know, 15 hours, 20 hours to dehydrate, then I can leave the house, I can go to sleep, and I don't have to worry about it. When I cook, I'm not used to cooking much. I don't do a lot of cooking myself. And it's funny because I always forget things. And it's so easy for me to burn stuff or to burn myself because I'm not used to the heat. So it's just pretty hilarious to watch me in the kitchen trying to actually use heat to cook.
You cook, but in different ways.
Correct.
Just not with fire.
Yeah. So I love my dehydrator for that reason. People ask me, can I make these crackers in the oven? And I always say, yeah, sure. But I don't know like how long, what temperature, you got to test it out because I haven't done it yet, which I probably should. I should just get it out of the way, but it's so much easier for me to dehydrate things.
Yeah. Is there a certain type of dehydrator that you suggest people purchase?
Yeah, so I have an Excalibur. I don't have a discount code for that one, unfortunately, which is also my favorite. I've had mine since I first went raw in 2008. It's still going strong. It's super simple. It has one button that you turn and you choose the temperature. That's it. On, off, very easy. And it's really good because it dries evenly. I've seen like cheaper dehydrators or the round ones that things get dried unevenly, and this one the air just circulates and it's a big box, so you can remove the trays and you can put other things inside. So for example, I've made like pyrex of lasagna, and then I just remove all the trays from my dehydrator and I put it in the dehydrator to warm it up, because if I put it at 115, that's a warm temperature. And then I like how versatile this dehydrator is versus different brands that I've seen.
I think it's exciting knowing that you can get things warm and still qualify for raw. So it doesn't, everything doesn't have to be room temperature or cold. You can have something warm too.
It's funny because I see so many people asking that question, and for me it's not even in my radar anymore. I'm just so used to it that I find my mouth is so sensitive to heat. You know, if I go out to eat and food comes steamy hot, I'm very sensitive to it. But definitely you can add some heat either through that, or I've seen people recommending like using a pan, and let's say you want to saute some veggies and mix them with your hand. I know that might be kind of gross for a lot of people, but you know, you're using clean hands, touching your own food. But the moment that the pan starts to burn your fingers, it's also burning the food. So that's when you know that you have achieved that temperature. So if you want to do things faster, you can just mix it in a pan and pay attention to the temperature.
That's a good hack, like a very good fun skill. If you know, if you want to get into it, that's a great thing to know.
It's easier for sure. But yeah, so the heat, you can also use spices to heat things up, or you know, pepper, like hot spices like that. It will make your blood circulate. So for people who live in a cold climate and they don't necessarily want to eat cold food all the time, they can add a lot of spices. But even like ginger and turmeric and cardamom and cinnamon, they're all warming spices, so they're going to make your blood flow. And with the blender too, with a high-speed blender, if you're making soup, for example, or sometimes I make lattes, I can blend it for longer on high speed, and it's going to warm up the liquid inside the blender, which is really cool too. It takes like 60 to 90 seconds. Yeah.
I love that.
So many life hacks in this episode.
I mean, again, if it's something that matters to you, you know, if you don't care, you can always warm it up. So it's just like, I wouldn't recommend using a microwave, for example, because it's not that great. You know, you're radiating your food. You're really destroying the molecules of your food. So I would recommend anybody to just toss their microwave. When I moved into my apartment, the first thing I did was to get the microwave and stick it somewhere else. and I'm like, I'm done. I use the cubby for spices. Using like an oven or the stove, it's just definitely better.
I remember growing up, my mom always had books in front of the microwave.
That's
Very young age, I haven't used a microwave because I was like, she would always say it's nuking my food and that's bad. So if someone uses a microwave, I'm like, oh, but I know that it's just the way that I was raised.
And that's something really big for me too, because, you know, I understand that I see food differently and that was my choice, but not everybody understands, believes, wants to do it. So, you know, being out in public, you have to be respectful of how other people eat and in their choices.
I think it's about being compassionate for your stranger and knowing that, there's so many different factors that play in a food and people's resources in eating. So to
Yeah.
always respect each other in whatever stage of their food journey they're in.
We're very emotionally attached to food too. So it's not like it's easy to just change, you know, like things we were brought up eating, and then we have memories of our mothers making a certain dish in this time of year or a birthday or whatever. And I feel like there's so much more than just food, that it's not easy. And I understand that.
100%.
But as you also said earlier, it's a choice, and we're all making our own choices every day. So we're just here as Upswing to present a choice that you could make in choosing to be raw vegan. What is soaking, and can you walk me through the pros and cons of that?
Sure. So basically, nuts and seeds, they have enzyme inhibitors. And when you soak them in water overnight, you are removing those enzyme inhibitors. And then you're making it easier for you to digest and assimilate all the nutrients. So ideally, we should always be soaking nuts and seeds before consuming. Most of them, not all of them have enzyme inhibitors, like hemp seeds, macadamia nuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, Brazil nuts, pine nuts. Those, they don't have it, so they don't need to be soaked. But ideally, you soak it. So I've seen the difference. For example, if you consume a handful of just plain walnuts, and then you have walnuts that have been soaked, and if you want them to be dry, you can dehydrate them into crunchy again. And it's just so much lighter to eat that than the raw walnuts as is, because your body can digest it better. And then from a culinary standpoint, depending on what you're making, you need them to be soaked for texture. So sometimes I make cashew cheese. It's way better to have soaked cashews, because otherwise the flavor is kind of off and it doesn't blend as well.
How do you make cashew cheese?
So
is that a complicated one?
No, you can just simply blend cashews into kind of like a cream. It would be more like a cream cheese type of thing. You can blend it with a little bit of water and lemon and some salt. And then you can choose to add spices to it. You can add garlic or onion or really whatever you want, jalapeno to make it spicy, cayenne pepper, sun-dried tomatoes or herbs. And you can make this delicious creamy, that we call cheese, which is not, but or you can do, you can go all out, and I actually culture the cheese, so I ferment it, which is another way of enhancing the nutritional benefits from food. So fermentation actually adds good bacteria, probiotics into the food, and we are full of bacteria, right? So we have our microbiome, which is the colony of bacteria in our gut. And if that's out of whack, we're more prone to having disease. So when our microbiome is balanced, we can digest food better, our immune system is better, we can assimilate better and think clearly. It's crazy, like the brain and gut connection. So there's so many things that can be caused by a poor gut health, and adding fermented foods is just a way of boosting it. So I love fermenting vegetables and fermenting cheese.
Can you suggest how somebody can easily start fermentation or to get into that?
Sure. So a really easy one is like kefir. So I make water kefir. There's milk kefir, which personally I've never had because I found out about kefir after I was already plant-based. But there's water kefir, and you can get water kefir grains online. You can just Google and find them. and it will come with the instructions, but basically you add sugar, water, and the grains in a glass jar, and you let it ferment at room temperature for 2 days. And then 2 days later, you strain it, and then you start the process again, and then you drink whatever the, the fermented water.
Is that also known as kefir?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I do a lot of goat kefir, especially in my smoothies.
Oh,
So
there you go.
I know
Because
that's so good for your bacteria and your whole body. Yes. Okay.
so I make water kefir. So
Love
it's just
that.
a different one. Yeah. And then you can add flavor to it. You can play around. But I feel like that's such an easy one, you know. I mean, nowadays you can buy kefir or kombucha at the store. You can buy sauerkraut, which is just fermented cabbage. You can also like Google some videos. It's super simple. You basically shred cabbage, add salt, and massage it really well, put it in a glass jar, and let it ferment for about 5 days.
Do you
And
have
it's
to put it in the fridge or can you leave it out?
going to leave it at room temperature because all the bacteria is going to proliferate at room temp. And then once it's ready, then you refrigerate to slow down fermentation. Consume that daily. It's so amazing for your microbiome.
Jumping into sprouting. What is sprouting and what are the pros and the cons?
Sure. So sprouting means basically activating the seeds in order to enhance its nutritional value. So basically, they become like biogenic, which means that they will create life. So if you throw a sprout on the ground, it's just going to turn into something else, right? So they're growing, they're full of life, and that's what you're consuming. So sprouting is also amazing. I do a lot of sprouted lentils, which is super easy. You just soak them in water overnight, and then you drain and rinse them. You leave them out in a colander with a bowl underneath, and you rinse them twice a day for about 3 days. They will start to grow that tail, and then after 3 days you can consume them. You can take them out of the colander, put them in the fridge, and you can sprinkle in your salads. I can eat that like popcorn. I sprinkle, salt, and I can just eat it as is. I love it. I didn't at first, and it's something that really grew on me, but adding sprouts to your food is amazing just because of the nutritional value. It's just like concentrated in that little teeny tiny seed.
So no one needs any tools to sprout besides a
Yeah.
colander. That's it. Okay. And you can
It's
just take regular lentils, take the lentils out of the bag, or anyone
correct.
buy them and then just rinse them 3 days in a row.
Yeah, you soak them first overnight and then drain and rinse. I feel like adding variety to your diet is so important too. We need to eat the rainbow.
Yeah.
I grew up with my mom saying that, and I would just, roll my eyes at her, and now I get it because each color will have different nutrients, and we need to add variety into our diets. Just rotate the foods that we're eating and not eating the same thing every day.
I could just listen to you talk about food like all day. Are there any misconceptions that you have run into on your raw vegan journey that you want to highlight?
I feel like, I brushed on the fact that people think that my food is very boring. Yeah. For example, that I eat celery sticks all day long, maybe with some hummus if I'm splurging. It comes from the idea, like you go to a restaurant, for example, and if you get vegetables as a side on the plate, they are just, I don't know, steamed, over steamed, they're mushy. You get the mushy broccoli, mushy cauliflower. So a lot of places don't know how to work with vegetables. And I feel like it's quite common for us to have that idea. But I always joked that, a banana's raw and vegan, but it's not labeled, so you're not afraid of it, right? So people have that, they have that mentality. They're afraid of it, or they get disgusted, or I don't know what it is. I don't know where that started. I don't know why they feel that way. So I feel like, learning how to make good food, which is super possible to make amazing food. You're not eating boring. Also, where do you get your protein? Everything has protein. And basically, protein is a chain of amino acids, and everything has amino acids. Maybe certain foods will have more of certain amino acids than others, and that's why it's important to eat a variety in order to get all the amino acids that it's necessary. What people believe or a lot of people think that we need to eat complete protein, which is, meat, but also beans can be complete, or sunflower sprouts can be complete protein, or hemp seeds can be complete protein. But we don't, because our bodies are smart enough that they can get the amino acids from different food and they can make protein. So complete protein basically means all the essential amino acids that our bodies don't produce. So there are 9 essential amino acids that we need to get from food. Also, that it can be expensive or difficult or time consuming. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it can be all of those things, but it doesn't need to. So when I first went raw, I had the need to eat gourmet food. So I would get every single book I had and I would make, complicated dishes because I loved it. And a lot of people tell me, oh, I don't have time for that. But you don't need a dehydrator. You don't need to be dehydrating things. That's extra, that's to add the extra crunch. Nowadays, you can buy flaxseed crackers at the store, which is amazing. Nowadays, you can buy coconut tortilla, which is simply made out of young coconut meat. So you don't need all those things, and you have access to different items that are truly healthy at the store. They might be more expensive than others, but I haven't gotten sick in over 12 years. And I know people that take pills if they have a headache, So nowadays, if I have a headache, I can be in tune with my body to say, oh, I didn't drink enough water today and I think I'm dehydrated. Oh, I didn't sleep enough. So I feel like, you're just putting your money elsewhere, and the benefits that you get from improving your diet, just they pour over every aspect of your life. And it doesn't need to be complicated. So my goal when I started teaching people was to show that you could still make a really amazing food that's tasty and it's fast and easy. I had 2 classes this week and I love the reactions. They're like, oh my gosh, you made that in 5 minutes. I can't believe it. And it's so good. And everybody's just so excited about it, So it makes me happy to just bust that myth.
Diving into raw food and then knowing that it can be inexpensive, it can be easy, and it can be delicious. Those are 3 really powerful points for people to walk away with.
Because those are very, people get scared over that. And last week, while talking to a friend, and he said, well, but I don't want to feel lonely, and then that hit me really hard because it's so true. And I understand. I'm from the south of Brazil. People barbecue and they're always together. There's always a gathering to barbecue. And I remember that when I changed my eating habits and I felt so strongly about them that because I was feeling so good, that it got to the point where I didn't care. But my transition was also different because first I did it alone on my own, and then I exposed myself to others. And then I was already set into that way of eating. But I totally understand that when you have that peer pressure, or just you want to be out and about and you don't know how to do it, it's difficult when you start. But it doesn't need to be that way, because I started seeing myself as a seed planter, so I would come everywhere and either I would eat before or I would bring food. But because I wasn't judging my friends and I was respecting the way that they were eating, they respected the way I ate, and they would either try to accommodate me or they would just respect me not eating, but they always invited me. And I thought that was so cool because the gathering became about being together. We don't get together to eat. We get together to have a good time. So if a person is trying to eat healthier and they want to change because of themselves, they shouldn't let that stop them, because they can still interact with people. They can still be social.
This has been so extraordinary. We did touch on a lot of different really phenomenal ideas. If you had maybe 5 key takeaways for people who want to start going raw vegan, what would those 5 steps be?
Do research, inform yourself, get planned and organized. Because making a menu and knowing what you're going to make ahead of time will make your life easier. Get a good blender. Start making smoothies.
Blend-tech.
Yeah, get a blend-tech. Start making smoothies every day, because that will really change your life. And I don't know, find a vegan friend. I like that one. Just having somebody that can inspire and motivate you and answer your questions and guide you through that journey, because we are social beings. It makes a difference to have somebody helping you there. I feel like that's so essential.
Carla, thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for giving us such fun, exciting new recipes
Thank
in
you for
raw
having
food.
me.
Yes, we're very happy that we had you. And my gosh, I know Alex and I are both excited to, get into the kitchen and see what we can start making raw food wise.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. It was an honor. Bye.
Bye.